They say the worst things in life come when you least expect them. For me, it was a Monday morning. I was still wearing my robe, holding a half-empty coffee mug, scrolling through my inbox like I always did before starting work. Then I saw it, subject line in bold letters, staring at me like a slap across the face. Position termination, effective immediately. At first I thought it was spam. Maybe someone hacked our system. I clicked it anyway. But it was real. No phone call, no meeting, no warning. Just an email that said my job had been eliminated due to internal restructuring. Just like that. After nearly a decade of loyalty. After building million-dollar client accounts, mentoring new hires, sacrificing weekends, holidays, even missing family events to keep clients happy. This was how they let me go. Let me back up a little and introduce myself before I tell you what happened next. My name is Emma Carter. I am 36 years old. I was born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa, and I have been living in Chicago for the past 15 years. For the last 8 of them, I worked as a senior account manager at a mid-sized firm called Bright Path Marketing Solutions. We were not a household name, but we had a strong portfolio, and our clients trusted us. I loved my job, or at least I used to. That changed when our leadership changed. And trust me, it changed fast. Everything started to unravel the moment Richard Collins walked through the door as our new marketing director. He was in his late 40s, slick hair, always in an expensive suit, flashing fake smiles that never quite reached his eyes. On day 1, he gave a speech about raising the bar and pushing for excellence. It sounded inspiring at the time. I even remember thinking, maybe this is the kind of leadership we need. But within weeks, his true nature started to show. He shouted at interns for minor mistakes. He took credit for presentations that I and my team had worked late nights to perfect. Once, he actually told me to delete my name from a client pitch deck and replace it with his because, and I quote, "They will take it more seriously coming from someone at my level." I should have known then. But I kept telling myself to be patient, that maybe he was just trying to prove himself in a new role, that maybe it was just the pressure getting to him. So I kept my head down and worked harder. I stayed late, unpaid, multiple nights a week. I absorbed the stress so my junior associates would not have to. And I stayed professional, through clenched teeth, through stolen ideas, through countless broken boundaries. I believed that my work would speak for itself, that my record would protect me. But I was wrong. The day before that email arrived, I stayed at the office until almost 9 p.m., finalizing a proposal for a huge retail client, one that I had brought in personally 2 years earlier. I remember walking past Richard's office that night. He was gone, of course, left at 5 as usual. I passed Claire, one of the newer associates, and gave her a tired smile. She had been cozying up to Richard lately, attending private strategy meetings I was no longer invited to. Something felt off, but I did not know just how deep it ran. I could feel the shift in the air, like a storm building behind a glass window. You cannot see it yet, but you know it is coming. The next morning, that email confirmed it. I stared at the screen, blinking, my heart sinking with every word. It was cold, lifeless, the kind of email you would send to cancel a subscription, not end someone's career. There was no acknowledgement of my contributions, no offer to discuss next steps. Just a generic paragraph and a vague promise to mail your final paycheck and severance documents within 5 business days. It felt like I had been erased, not just let go, but completely dismissed from memory, like none of it had ever mattered. I sat there for what felt like an hour, not even realizing my coffee had gone cold. I did not cry. Not yet. I was too stunned, too humiliated. I just kept hearing Richard's voice in my head, saying things like, "We are building a stronger, leaner team, and only the top performers will thrive under my leadership." But I was a top performer. I had the metrics to prove it. The only reason I was on the chopping block was because I refused to play along with his ego-driven games. I had boundaries. I spoke up when he crossed them, and now I was paying the price. I am telling you this because stories like mine happen more than people think, and I want you to know this is not the end of the story. Not even close. Because sometimes, getting pushed off the edge is exactly what you need to find out you can fly. BrightPath Marketing Solutions had become more than just my workplace. It was my second home. The office buzzed with creativity, energy, and pressure. But it was also the place where I had found my rhythm, my voice, and my confidence. I started there in my late 20s, unsure of myself, but eager to prove what I could do. And I did. I climbed my way up from junior associate buried under spreadsheets to senior account manager, overseeing some of our biggest, most high-profile campaigns. My days were long, my inbox was never empty, but I loved the challenge. I thrived on building relationships with clients, solving tough problems, and mentoring the younger staff. I did not just work there. I helped build it. The company had gone through its fair share of changes over the years, but nothing as dramatic as when Richard Collins was hired as the new marketing director. I still remember the staff meeting the day he arrived. He walked in with this big, gleaming smile, designer watch flashing under the conference lights, and a voice that oozed charm and authority. "We are about to take BrightPath to the next level," he said. Everyone clapped. I smiled politely, but something about him felt off. Maybe it was the way he never really looked anyone in the eye. Maybe it was the way his praise always sounded just a little too polished. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but I was not. Within the first month, I noticed things starting to shift. Meetings became colder, deadlines got tighter. Richard started changing processes that had worked fine for years, just so he could put his name on the new system. He started taking credit for other people's work, my work, and brushing off feedback like it was a personal insult. I tried to stay out of it. I told myself, just focus on your clients, Emma. Let the results speak for themselves. And they did. In the last quarter before I was let go, my accounts alone brought in nearly 40% of our total revenue. I managed 5 major clients, each with unique goals, strict deadlines, and high expectations. They came to us for expertise, but they stayed because they trusted me. I had also taken Mila Rowan under my wing. She was one of our newer associates, bright, eager, and quick to learn. From day one, she reminded me of myself. She had the same wide-eyed energy, the same hunger to grow. I spent time training her, giving her guidance when others were too busy or too impatient. She always listened, always asked thoughtful questions. Over time, we built a bond that went beyond the office. I saw her like a little sister, and I knew she looked up to me. In a workplace that was starting to feel more competitive and cutthroat, that connection meant something. It reminded me that there were still good people in the mix. Despite the red flags, I still thought I was safe. I was the go-to for any tough client situation. I had a long track record of delivering results, keeping relationships strong, and helping the team stay organized under pressure. Even when Richard started cutting budgets, changing reporting lines, and making people re-interview for their own jobs, I was confident that my work would speak loud enough to be heard. I stayed calm. I stayed focused. I told myself that storms pass, and people like him usually burn out on their own. But I had underestimated just how far someone like Richard would go to protect his image and secure his position. The truth is, I saw it coming, just not the way it happened. I had noticed a growing distance between leadership and the staff. I had noticed the private meetings, the sudden shifts in who got included in decisions, and who got left out. I had even heard whispers, conversations in break rooms that stopped the moment I walked in. But I pushed all of it aside. I kept working late, showing up early, and doing everything I could to prove my worth. I believed that loyalty, performance, and professionalism would protect me, but they didn't. And now looking back, I realized something important. The calm I felt during those final weeks was not safety. It was the silence before the chaos, the quiet before the foundation cracked. I was standing on ground that had already started to shift, and I did not even realize it. I thought I was too valuable to lose. I thought people like Richard would never risk the company's top performer just to play power games. But they did. And the worst part? They did not even have the decency to tell me to my face. 2 weeks before that email shattered everything, I started noticing the signs. Small at first, but unmistakable once I look back. Claire Monroe, the kind of coworker who always knew how to play the game without ever really doing the work, had suddenly become a regular fixture outside Richard's office. I would walk by and catch glimpses of her leaning in close, whispering like they shared some private joke. It was never professional, never collaborative, just secretive. At the time, I brushed it off. I had bigger things to focus on: client launches, reports due, team check-ins. I told myself I was being paranoid. I had been in this business long enough to know that not every closed door meant betrayal, but this time, it did. Claire had always been ambitious, but not in a way that earned respect. She chased titles, not trust. She rarely stayed late, rarely stepped up unless there was something in it for her. And yet, somehow, she kept climbing. I used to defend her, even when others rolled their eyes behind her back. I thought maybe she just needed the right mentorship, the right push. I never imagined she would be the one sliding the knife in my back while pretending to admire my work. But that is exactly what she did. And she did it with a smile. Turns out, while I was spending my evenings perfecting client proposals, Claire was pitching a different kind of idea behind closed doors. With the company tightening budgets and Richard looking for ways to impress upper management, Claire saw her opportunity. She told him that if they let me go, she could absorb my accounts without missing a beat, sell the same service but at a cheaper price point. No loyalty, no hesitation, just numbers on a spreadsheet and a play for power. And the worst part? He believed her. He bought every word. There was no warning, no conversation, not even a subtle clue, just an email that hit my inbox like a hammer. I remember rereading it over and over, hoping there was some kind of mistake. But the message was clear. My time at BrightPath was over. And within hours, Claire was already introducing herself to my clients like nothing had happened. No transition period, no explanation, just a cold, calculated takeover. It was not just business. It was personal. I had given nearly a decade of my life to that company, and in the end, they handed my work over like a piece of lost luggage. No thank you. No goodbye. Just silence. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mila. Her voice cracked as soon as she said my name. I could hear the guilt in her tone, the disbelief. Jenna, I had no idea. Bryce said it was restructuring, but this is wrong. I held the phone to my ear and let her words wash over me. Mila had nothing to do with it, but still, hearing someone acknowledge that I was not crazy, it meant more than she probably realized. I told her it was okay, that I was fine. But inside, I was anything but fine. I felt humiliated, betrayed, used, like I had been playing by the rules of a game everyone else stopped following a long time ago. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from people I trusted. I had trained Claire when she first joined the team. I had vouched for her in meetings. I had helped her smooth over client issues she had fumbled. And Richard? I had given him the benefit of the doubt, even when it was clear he was out for himself. I had believed that hard work, results, and loyalty still mattered, that if I kept my head down and delivered, I would be safe. But I was wrong. What mattered most to them was not performance, it was politics. In the days that followed, I kept quiet. I answered a few messages from clients who had heard whispers and were confused. I told them I was moving on, kept it professional. I swallowed my pride and tried not to let the anger consume me. But deep down, I knew something had shifted inside me. This was not just about losing a job. This was about waking up to the reality that the people I thought had my back never really did. And that kind of realization changes you. I was not going to scream. I was not going to beg. But I was not going to disappear either. Not after everything I had built. Not after everything I had given. They made their move. Now, it was my turn. For 2 days, I completely shut down. I barely moved from my couch. I kept the curtains drawn, the lights dim, and my phone on silent. Food lost its taste. Even the smell of coffee, which usually comforted me, made my stomach turn. I could not eat. I could not sleep. My thoughts kept looping back to that moment, the subject line, the email, the hollow silence that followed. My identity had been so deeply wrapped up in that job, in the clients I served, in the people I trained, that once it was ripped away, I no longer knew who I was. I was not just grieving a position. I was grieving a part of myself. Every time I thought about it, my hands started to shake, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. 9 years of sacrifice and success erased in a moment. No exit meeting, no recognition, no decency. The company I had poured myself into had tossed me aside like I was nothing. I kept wondering if I had done something wrong, if I had missed a sign, made a mistake, failed to play the right game. That second night, I laid awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, tears running silently down the sides of my face. I did not want pity. I wanted answers. And more than anything, I wanted to feel like I still mattered. On the third morning, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were puffy, my skin pale, my posture slouched. I looked like someone who had been defeated. And maybe I was. But then, somewhere between brushing my teeth and tying my hair back, something in me hardened. Not in a cold way, but in a way that said, enough is enough. I walked into my kitchen, poured a fresh cup of coffee, sat at my table, and just stared at my laptop. For a moment, I could still hear Bryce's voice echoing in my head. His smug tone, the way he talked over people in meetings, the way he always made things about him. I remembered one meeting in particular, just a few months before the layoff. A client had complimented the growth of their brand and mentioned how much they appreciated our strategy. And without hesitation, Bryce leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "We are the reason your brand is relevant." I remember sitting across from him, biting my tongue, because I had been the one managing that client for 3 years. I had led the rebrand, overseen the launch, written the strategy from scratch. He had shown up once, maybe twice, for the photo op. That moment stuck with me, and now, as I sat there, remembering those words, something inside me clicked. That was a lie. I was the reason. I opened my laptop. My hands still trembled, but there was something else under the surface now. Determination. I did not know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not going to disappear. I pulled up an old folder of client contact sheets and scrolled through the names. So many of them had reached out directly to me over the years for advice, feedback, guidance. Not to the company, not to Richard, to me, because they trusted me, because I had earned that trust through work, care, and consistency. I started drafting a simple email, not bitter, not emotional, just honest. I thanked them for the opportunity to work together, shared that I was starting something new, and said that if they ever needed support outside of BrightPath, I would be happy to stay in touch. I saved the draft, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. I was not trying to steal anyone. I was not chasing revenge. I was reclaiming my worth. I was reminding myself, and maybe them too, that the face they had worked with, the mind behind the strategy, was still here. That afternoon, I reached out to Greg Sinclair, a longtime family friend and a trusted corporate attorney. I wanted to make sure I understood what I legally could and could not do. Greg had always been honest, always protective. When I told him what happened, he paused for a long time, then said, "Emma, they messed with the wrong person." His words felt like a spark. He reviewed my contract and confirmed what I hoped. My non-compete clause had expired months ago. They never renewed it, which meant I was free. Free to build, free to choose, free to rise. And for the first time in days, I felt alive again. The moment Greg told me my contract had expired 6 months ago, I felt like a steel door had been kicked open inside my chest. For the first time since that awful email, I could breathe. I was not trapped. I was not tied down by a non-compete. I was free. Their mistake, failing to renew my contract, was now my opportunity, and I was not going to waste it. I sat at my dining table with a blank notebook and a cheap ballpoint pen, and I wrote down every client I had worked with in the past year. No filters, just names, industries, account values, and a simple column beside each one labeled trust level. I marked stars next to the clients I knew I had strong rapport with, the ones who called me directly instead of going through the company, the ones who once said, "Emma, I do not know how we do this without you." I did not reach out right away. I wanted to do this right, carefully, quietly. I knew how quickly rumors spread in our industry. I did not want to look like I was poaching or bitter. I wanted to build something clean. So I gave myself 1 week, 7 days to create the foundation of what would become mine. I scribbled brand names in the margins of my notebook, crossed out half of them, and circled the one that stuck with me, Collins & Coed. It felt honest, simple, like something people could trust. Underneath the name, I wrote the tagline that kept coming back to me every time I thought about what I stood for: real strategy, real results. I designed a basic logo using a free online tool, nothing flashy, just bold, clear lettering and a deep blue accent. Then I built a bare-bones website on a template platform. 1 page, clean layout, testimonials from clients I had saved over the years, stripped of identifying info but filled with real results. I included a short paragraph about who I was, what I did, and how I worked. No fluff, no agency speak, just the truth. I help brands find clarity and growth through personalized marketing strategy. I do not believe in shortcuts. I believe in people. That was the line that anchored it all. Once the website was live, I created a new email address and set up a fresh business phone line. I did not post on social media. I did not blast any announcements. I kept everything small and intentional. Then I picked up my phone and started making quiet calls. Not sales calls, not pitches, just conversations. I reached out to a handful of people I had built trust with over the years: CEOs, marketing leads, small business owners who had once said, "If you ever go out on your own, let me know." Well, now I was letting them know. One of the first people I called was Travis Blaine, founder of a retail tech startup I had worked with for almost 3 years. I helped him launch his brand from the ground up, and we had always had an easy, respectful relationship. I left him a short message and followed up with a simple email, letting him know I had moved on from BrightPath and was now taking on select projects through my own consultancy. No pressure, just an open door. Within 2 days, he replied, "Let us talk Monday." That response lit a fire in me. I realized then that I did not need a massive following or a big marketing campaign to get started. I needed relationships. And I had those, built from years of showing up, following through, and doing the real work. As the week went on, I heard back from more people. Some replied with kind words and encouragement. Some said they were happy where they were, but wished me well. A few asked for a proposal. It was slow and steady, but it was real. And more than anything, it was mine. Every time I sent an email or scheduled a meeting, I felt stronger. I was no longer trying to prove myself to people who saw me as disposable. I was creating something for myself, on my own terms. And each small step forward felt like I was reclaiming a piece of the confidence that had been taken from me. I was not working in revenge. I was working in purpose. And that, I knew, would be the difference between what I was building and what I had left behind. The first real conversation I had after launching Collins & Cobra was with Travis Blaine. He was one of the clients I had worked with the longest, CEO of a growing retail tech startup in Austin. We had built his brand strategy from scratch, taken his product from a small beta test to a nationwide launch, and through it all, he had trusted me with every major decision. I had not spoken to him since the layoff, and I was not sure how he would respond, but I knew I owed it to myself to reach out. So I sent a short email, letting him know I was no longer with BrightPath and was now consulting independently if he ever needed support. Less than 24 hours later, he called. "Jenna, what happened at EdgeSphere?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the confusion in it. I took a breath, kept my tone even, and told him the truth. No bitterness, no drama, just facts. "They let me go via email," I said. No meeting, no explanation, just an abrupt end after nearly a decade. I am starting something new now. It is small, just me for now, but it is built around what I have always done, strategy that works. No pressure at all, but if you are ever open to a different kind of partnership, I would love to talk. There was a pause on the line, long enough for me to wonder if I had said too much. Then he spoke. "Let's talk Monday." That was all he said. But the way he said it made my stomach flip. Not with nerves, but with hope. Real cautious hope. We spoke on Monday, just like he said. It was not a formal pitch. It felt more like reconnecting with an old friend. Both of us reflecting on the years we had worked together and how much had changed since. He asked good questions about my new structure, what kind of clients I was looking for, how I planned to scale. I answered everything honestly. I told him I was not chasing growth for the sake of ego. I was focused on doing work that mattered, with people who valued relationships over buzzwords. He nodded, then said something that stayed with me. "I never stayed with EdgeSphere for the agency. I stayed because of you." By Friday, he signed a contract. That moment changed everything. It was not about the money. It was about what that signature represented. Validation, trust, and proof that my work had always been more than the logo at the top of my old email signature. Within a week, another former client reached out, then another. The conversations were quiet but powerful. Each one started the same way, with surprise followed by support and ending with possibility. These were not just business discussions. These were conversations that mattered. They reminded me that people notice more than you think. They remember how you made them feel, how you showed up, how you delivered when it counted. One client told me, "I figured something was off after our last call. It did not feel like you anymore." Another said, "I always wondered why they never gave you more visibility. You were the one doing all the work." These comments made me feel a strange mix of anger and gratitude. Anger that I had stayed silent for so long, letting others take credit. But gratitude that these people saw me, even when I did not see myself clearly. The momentum built slowly, but steadily. I kept my head down, stayed professional, and focused on quality over quantity. I was careful with every commitment I made. I knew that every project I took on was not just a job. It was a statement, a message to the world that I was not broken. I was building. And each signature on a contract, each referral, each positive result reminded me that I had something valuable to offer. I was not running from what happened at BrightPath. I was running toward something better, something that belonged to me. And the most beautiful part of it all? I did not have to scream, argue, or defend my worth. I just had to be myself, the same woman who had been doing the real work all along. Only this time I was doing it on my terms. Within 3 weeks of launching Collins & Co., 3 of EdgeSphere's biggest clients had quietly jumped ship. At first, I was honestly surprised by how fast it all happened. These were legacy accounts, relationships that had taken years to build. But now I realized they had not stayed with the agency because of the agency. They had stayed because of me. Because I picked up their calls on the first ring, because I knew the names of their kids, their launch dates, their goals. I had been their steady point of contact when things got messy, their advocate in rooms they were not allowed in. EdgeSphere had underestimated just how much that mattered. The first client left quietly, just like Travis. Then the second emailed me out of the blue, asking if I was taking on new projects. By the time the third one called, I had stopped feeling anxious and started feeling something else entirely: clarity. Every new conversation confirmed it. I had not been a replaceable cog in a machine. I had been the engine. And now that engine had found a new home and a better direction. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Bryce. I stared at the screen, stunned for a moment. His name felt like a ghost trying to claw its way back into my reality. I let it ring twice before answering, if only to satisfy some dark curiosity. "Jenna," he started, trying to sound casual, even friendly. "I hope we can talk." I hung up. I did not owe him my time, my peace, or my patience. Not after how he treated me, not after the email. Not after the way he let Claire make a move on my accounts like they were pawns on a board instead of people I had built trust with. I did not feel petty. I felt powerful. I had spent so long being quiet, being agreeable, being the one who smoothed things over. Not anymore. Later that day, Mila texted me. Her message was short, but it said everything I needed to know. "He's losing it. Claire can't handle the accounts. They're blaming each other." I could almost picture it. Bryce pacing in his office, running a hand through his perfect gelled hair, voice raised. Claire frantically scrolling through client emails, trying to sound confident in meetings while making excuses for late deliverables. Neither of them had any idea what it actually took to maintain those relationships. They had only ever seen the results, never the work. Now, without me, it was falling apart. Part of me felt sad for Mila. She was still in the middle of it, trying to stay afloat in a company that was clearly unraveling. I made a mental note to reach out to her soon, not to poach, but to support. The rest of me? I felt calm, not smug, not gloating. Just a deep, quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing the truth is finally visible. All those years of being overlooked, downplayed, passed over. This was the reckoning I never asked for, but always deserved. I got back to work, kept building. I was careful to stay professional. No social media subtweets, no press releases boasting about the clients I had gained. Just focus, clarity, and intention. Every client I took on became an opportunity to reinforce that this was not about revenge. It was about doing better, being better, building something that could last, because it was rooted in real trust. By the end of that month, I had 6 clients under contract. My name started circulating through quiet industry channels. Not loud, but consistent. People were curious. Where did she go? Why did she leave? Can we talk to her? And just like that, the power shifted. Not in some dramatic public way, but in the small, steady cracks that form when people realize the foundation they trusted was never stable to begin with. EdgeSphere still had their name, their office, their ego. But I had something they could never rebuild, the trust of the people who mattered. And that was just the beginning. About a month after launching Collins and Cumberland, I got an unexpected email from one of the clients who had followed me out of EdgeSphere. Attached was an internal memo from Bryce, marked confidential. Of course, it had found its way into the inboxes of several former clients, people who now worked with me. I read it once, then again, barely believing how boldly dishonest he could be. In it, Bryce blamed client volatility for recent losses, suggesting that the agency was simply navigating a challenging season. Not a word about the quiet talent exodus, not a mention of me, just a weak attempt to rewrite the story before the truth settled in too deeply. I did not respond to the email. I did not need to. The clients who mattered already knew. They had lived through the difference between EdgeSphere and Collins & Co. They saw the drop in performance, the sudden scramble, the lack of follow-through. You cannot spin loyalty. You cannot fake consistency. And when people have experienced both, genuine care versus corporate lip service, they know exactly where they want to stay. I was not looking for revenge, not anymore. The adrenaline had faded. What remained was something better: stability, confidence, and a deep sense of purpose. But poetic justice? That has a way of finding you when you are focused on the right things. It came in the form of a Forbes local feature. Someone on their editorial team had apparently heard about what I was doing and reached out for an interview. I almost said no, wanting to keep things low profile. But then I thought, no, this is not about dragging the past. This is about showing what can be done when people bet on themselves. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. The headline read, "One to watch, Collins & Coran disrupts local market with 3 major client wins in first month." My heart raced when I saw it live, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. It was surreal seeing something I had built from scratch earn that kind of recognition. The piece praised the clean strategy, the rapid growth, and most importantly, the approach. It quoted clients saying things like, "We feel seen again," and "They deliver results without the fluff." It was not flashy. It was honest. And that is what made it powerful. I did not share it widely, just posted it once on LinkedIn with a quiet thank you to the clients who trusted me early on. That single post brought in 5 new consultation requests by the end of the week. One of them came from a competitor of a former Edge Sphere client. Momentum was no longer a dream. It was real, and it was mine. A week after the article published, Mila texted me again. Just 3 words. "Bryce stepped down." I stared at the message for a moment, letting it settle. Then came the follow-up. "Company-wide email says he's leaving to focus on personal growth. Claire's apparently not talking to anyone. Everyone's on edge." I did not laugh. I did not cheer. I just exhaled. It felt like the final thread snapping loose from a chapter that no longer belonged to me. Bryce stepping down was not my victory. It was his reckoning. A collapse built on arrogance, poor leadership, and a complete misunderstanding of value. Leadership is not about power. It is about people. It always has been. That night, I closed my laptop early and sat out on the back porch, letting the quiet fill the space. I thought about all the nights I had spent worrying about being enough, about losing everything, about whether I would ever find solid ground again. And here I was, calm, steady, and full of vision for what was next. The final blow was not mine to deliver. It was theirs to feel. All I did was keep moving forward, keep showing up, keep doing the work. Turns out, that was all the revenge I ever needed. It has been 6 months now since I got that email, the one that changed everything, the one that used to make my chest tighten every time I thought about it. Now it barely crosses my mind unless someone asks how Collins & Co. started. Funny how something so painful can become something you are grateful for. Not because of what it took from you, but because of what it gave you. Perspective, strength, a reset you would have never chosen, but ended up needing. My small agency is not just surviving, it is thriving. We are not flashy. We are not trying to be the biggest, but we are booked solid. Word of mouth has been our best marketing strategy. People talk, and when they find a team that actually listens, actually delivers, and treats them like more than a line on a spreadsheet, they stick around. Then they tell their colleagues. And that ripple effect? That is how we built something real. Mila is now my business partner. I brought her in officially after month 3. She had been helping behind the scenes anyway, handling logistics, offering insight, doing late-night strategy calls with me when a client's campaign was on the line. One afternoon over coffee, I looked at her and said, "I do not want to do this without you." She nodded and said, "Then let's build it together." That was it. No drama, no ego, just mutual trust and a shared vision. It is rare. I know that, and I do not take it for granted. We work out of a small loft downtown. The space has exposed brick, high ceilings, and too many plants. It smells like coffee and ambition. Some days we play music while we work. Some days it is dead quiet, except for the tapping of keyboards and the occasional laugh when one of us finds a ridiculous meme. It is peaceful. It is productive. And most of all, it feels like home. There is no walking on eggshells, no pretending, just honest work with people who care. Clients respect us, and that is because we respect them. We keep our promises. We communicate clearly. We do not disappear when things get hard. If something goes wrong, we own it. If something goes right, we share the credit. That kind of culture, it is not just rare, it is magnetic. People feel it. They know when you are genuine. They know when you are not just chasing profit, but building something sustainable and meaningful. Every now and then, someone from EdgeSphere reaches out, not to gossip, but to congratulate. A few have asked if we are hiring. Some just want to say they always believed in me, even if they could not say it back then. I do not hold grudges. I do not need to. Life has a way of sorting things out. What matters is that I stayed true to who I was, even when it would have been easier to fall apart or become someone bitter. I chose to rebuild, and now I get to live in the house I built, brick by brick. Looking back, that email was not the end of my career. It was the start of my freedom. It forced me to confront everything I had outgrown, everything I had accepted out of fear or comfort. And once I let go, I found space to create something better. Not just a company, but a life. One where my time is my own, where the people around me are here by choice, where I get to work with purpose every single day. So if you have ever been blindsided or pushed out or underestimated, let me tell you, the story does not end there. Sometimes that sharp, sudden ending is just the beginning of something much more powerful. You just have to give yourself permission to start again. And when you do it your way. Because the best revenge, it is not proving them wrong. It is living so fully, so freely, that they become irrelevant. Getting laid off via email taught me something powerful. Sometimes, rejection is just the universe redirecting you, not punishing you, not defining you, just pushing you towards something you did not yet have the courage to reach for yourself. It did not feel like that in the beginning, of course. At first, it felt like betrayal, like my worth had been reduced to a subject line and a cold message. But time has a funny way of revealing the bigger picture, and now I see it clearly. That email was not an ending, it was a pivot point. What surprised me most was how quiet my response was. I did not lash out. I did not go online and write a takedown post. I did not start whispering through the industry grapevine. I did not scream. I did not beg. I went quiet. I went inward. And then I went to work. That silence, it turns out, said more than any rant ever could. Because while they were scrambling to cover their mistakes, I was building. While they were losing clients, I was gaining momentum. While they were pointing fingers, I was shaking hands. Silence has power when it is chosen. When you are not silenced, but when you choose not to waste energy on things that are beneath your growth. I realized early on that no one wins in a shouting match. The real power is in progress. The real power is in showing, not telling, in letting the results speak. And when they do, they speak louder than anything else. My silence was not weakness. It was restraint. It was focus. And it was the loudest way to say, you made a mistake. Every part of this journey has reinforced a truth I wish I had known earlier. Your value does not come from a title. It does not come from the approval of people who were never really paying attention. It comes from within, from your ability to pivot, to adapt, to create something new from nothing. I was terrified in the beginning. I did not have a master plan. I just had clarity. And that was enough. Because clarity breeds action, and action builds momentum, and momentum changes everything. There is something deeply satisfying about creating something that is yours, not inherited, not handed to you, built by your own hands, shaped by your own vision. Collins & Co. is not just a company, it is proof. Proof that I was never the problem. Proof that what they dismissed was actually the engine behind their success. Proof that when given the chance, people will follow authenticity. That loyalty is not to brands, it is to people. And when people feel seen and heard, they stay. The most satisfying revenge of all has nothing to do with making others feel small. It is about reclaiming your space, reclaiming your narrative, turning a painful moment into a powerful foundation. I did not need to sabotage anyone. I did not need to watch them burn. I just needed to rise. And in doing so, I found something better than revenge. I found peace, freedom, purpose, things I would never have discovered if I had stayed in a place that no longer fit who I was becoming. Now, I do not wake up dreading emails. I do not sit in meetings holding my breath, waiting for the next passive-aggressive jab. I do not question my voice. I use it. I do not shrink to keep others comfortable. I stand tall because I earned this. Every late night, every doubtful morning, every quiet step forward brought me here, and I would not trade it for anything. So if someone out there is listening to this and feeling lost or discarded, know this: their rejection is not your truth. It is not the final word. It is just noise. What you build next, that is your voice. That is your power. That is your legacy. Let them say whatever they need to say. Let them rewrite the story however they want. Because the truth, the real story, it is not in what they did. It is in what you did next.